3 commercial ships have been hit by unidentified projectiles near the Strait of Hormuz. That's according to the UK Maritime Trade Operations Centre, which monitors activity in the waterway. The strait is a key international shipping route for oil and gas. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that the route was closed to transit shortly after the war began. And Israeli forces have been bombarding the Iranian capital city. Overnight, airstrikes have hit near Tehran's Mehrabad airport. In earlier attacks, Israeli forces had been claiming they were targeting military command centers, but as we were mentioning, the Red Crescent says a residential building has been hit. Going to bring in our guest. Joining us in the studio is Sultan Barakat, Professor of Public Policy at Hamad Bin Khalifa University in Qatar, and Abbas Aslani is in Tehran. He's a Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Abbas, I'd like to start with you. We've just shown those pictures of the crowds there in Iran, in Tehran, who have been gathering for the funerals of these senior Iranian military commanders. We had originally seen the attacks being carried out by US and Israel on military targets and targets linked to the leadership in Iran. But as our correspondents have been telling us, they are now seem to be widening that to targets that are residential, that are schools, that are public infrastructure. In your assessment, how is that changing the way that Iranians are seeing this conflict? Is it moving from simply being targeted at the regime to targeted at Iran as a whole?
Well, it seems that the scope of this conflict is expanding, and the other parties, meaning the US and Israel, they want to somehow socialize this war and target civilian infrastructure. The reason could be to bring instability and chaos to the country, to make the public, the average citizens, to feel the war consequences, and to make the governance the day after more difficult for the establishment. Even if this war is over, they want to make it, the establishment busy with rebuilding and reconstructing those facilities, which could take some time. And but immediately, I think what they are aspiring to see is to somehow to bring people into this and to create difficulties for them to be unhappy and somehow to provoke armed groups to add chaos to the situation.
Sultan, let me ask you, just as a follow-up to what Abbas was talking about there, if one of the intended results of this is supposed to bring chaos and to bring fragmentation, to use Abbas's word, into Iran, how significant is that, given the fact that we've been searching for or trying to work out what the end game for both Israel and the US is in this? Is it possible that a fragmented Iran would constitute what the US and Israel might see as a victory?
Well, I think it will, and they will want it to end up not only just fragmented and potentially in a civil war, but also engaging in conflict with neighboring countries so that they can drain both at the same time, and Israel gets away with its own strategic objectives. And I hope that this is not what we're all heading to. And we can see that, like, at least from the Gulf states side, they're doing their very best to absorb those Iranian reactions and retaliations and so on, and make sure that it doesn't develop into a direct confrontation with Iran. And of course, Trump and Netanyahu were disappointed that the Iranian public did not rise against the government when they decapitated the political leadership. So these two factors have maybe disturbed a little bit the calculations of Israel and the United States for now.
Abbas, let me ask you, just again, relating back to the pictures that we've seen. Now, in the previous conflict, back in June of last year, when Israel and the US attacked Iran, there was an upsurge of public support for the leadership of the country. Now, of course, these were also people in Iran who had been protesting against the government prior to that because they were very concerned about the economic stagnation, the economic struggle that the country was going through. How do you think this is going to play out? Do you think that what we're seeing is essentially, if you like, a knee-jerk reaction, for want of a better phrase, an initial reaction in support of the government, which then may dissipate? Or do you think that this is an indication that there is stronger support for the government than perhaps the US and Israel had planned?
Well, in the face of a foreign aggression, even against the backdrop of economic hardship, people seem to be not welcoming that foreign intervention and supporting the establishment. And we saw that succession was somehow expedited and facilitated within this context. Maybe the assumption in the US and Israel was that given those recent economic protests in the country, if they attack the country, there would be public uprising against the political establishment. But that was not the case. These days, we are seeing gatherings here in Tehran and across the country in different cities, but they are not aimed at protesting against the government, but condemning the foreign aggression and supporting the political system. Again, I think maybe the signs could be somehow different relatively, but majority of the people are rallying around the flag in the face of these strikes. And this is something which was not maybe anticipated by the US and Israel. They thought that they could somehow provoke and mobilize these protests against the government. This didn't happen. And they thought that maybe a Venezuela-like model could be adopted toward Iran by decapitating the country politically and militarily. They can make the Iran to capitulate and surrender. This didn't happen. They resorted to armed groups. Now I think they are targeting civilian infrastructure to make those consequences somehow for the average citizens to be felt, and to resort to the initial stage to bring uprising and instability, which Iran has been trying to say that they will stop this. And the average citizens so far, they have not responded to such a call.
Sultan Barakat, let's talk about what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. It was, since the start of this conflict, the Strait of Hormuz was always in the frame. It was a key element of this conflict, but nevertheless, to some degree, it was on the sidelines. Now it's moving front and center, and we're seeing more action there. Iran is saying that it will close the Strait of Hormuz, that it will ban all transport through the Strait of Hormuz. Is it better, in your estimation, that Iran uses that leverage of actually physically closing it, or is it better for it just to have the threat of closing it? Does that give it more flexibility when it comes to possibly negotiations about some way of ending this conflict?
Well, I think we passed the stage of making threats at this moment, and if they are going to do something, they will probably do their very best to disrupt the shipping movement, and also to try and attack the American Navy force there. But traditionally, over the last 10 years or so, the Iranian oil itself did not really make a huge difference to the international market, because Iran was under sanctions and they were largely selling it to the Chinese in a bartering sort of arrangement. And the real question is why the US until now has not released its strategic oil reserve from Louisiana and Texas. Back in 2022, if you recall, when the Ukraine-Russia war led to an oil crisis around the world, energy crisis, Biden very quickly started to tap into that, and he used 180 million barrels for around 180 days to try and stabilize the price globally, and particularly within the US. And the question, I think, that is really so far I couldn't find any answer why Trump is not doing that at the moment. Is it because he's restrained by the institutions within the US? Is it in his interest to actually push the gas price a little bit up, even within the American market, for something that he has in mind to do with the coming elections, with the arrangements within the United States? Or is he really trying to support and somehow strengthen the position Putin has and Russia has in terms of its grip on the energy in relation to Europe and elsewhere? And I think all those questions need to be considered simultaneously. The Iranian reaction has been predicted for decades. Every strategic report that was written about how Iran would react has talked about them trying to stop the Hormuz Strait. So there's nothing new there, including the floating mines and all this. They've used this in their war with Iraq, in Shatt al-Arab. They have the technology, they have the ability to use it. And I don't see any surprise in all of that. The real surprise is why the US until now is not tapping into its reserves. Is it because the price is now too high to resupply it? I don't know. But that's an issue I think we must try and find an answer for.
Abbas Aslani, I want to ask the final question to you. Obviously, as we've been reporting, Iran has been carrying out attacks on neighbouring Gulf countries. But of course, the impact of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has an impact on the economies of those countries as well as, of course, the economy of Iran. To what extent do you think is Iran prepared to risk the relationships that it's had for so long with its Gulf neighbours, albeit that some of those relationships have been tense at times, but nevertheless there will come a point when this conflict does end and Iran may well need those neighbouring countries to help it rebuild its economy?
Well, sure. What is going on is impacting Iran's relations with those neighboring countries. And maybe Iran is somehow immediately is struggling with an existential threat at the moment. That's why it is taking care of those threats coming from the American and Israeli side. And maybe the day after, they would be thinking of how to recover and rebuild those ties. And Tehran has been critical of those countries for giving airspace or territory to the U.S. to initiate aggression against the country. That's also the case. But all in all, whatever the reason is, this is qualitatively impacting this process. And this is not good for Iran. This is not good for the region. Maybe that's what Israel and the United States are aspiring to see. But this is part of a multi-front pressure, let's say, campaign against the U.S. and Israel. This is not just about military exchange of fire, but it's also about, let's say, economic and geopolitical battle between the two sides, which Iran wants to inflict costs on the other side in order to stop them from, attacking the country in future. So that's why this has become a bit more complicated. Even in the military front, we're seeing different fields. It is not just Iran. We're seeing Hezbollah in Lebanon, or Iraq is also targeting American assets. And Iran wants to make sure that it can use different tools in order to stop future insecurity and attack as well.
Abbas Aslani and Sultan Barakat, gentlemen, and thank you both.
Thank you.